They couldn't have planned this any better, and things have just lined up absolutely perfectly for the Toronto Blue Jays is following what has been the craziest and busiest day of the offseason thus far across the MLB. We have some huge updates specifically surrounding the Toronto Blue Jays and a couple of key players that have big implications going forward as things really start to pick up. We'll break down those new reports as well as a ton of other updates, including Ross Atkins and John Schneider speaking out and revealing some key details surrounding their free agent and trade pursuits. But not only that, Dylan Cease, he's spoken out for the first time since being signed by the Jays. And he reveals something they're going to want to stay tuned for because it is very encouraging as it relates to future free agents joining this team in the next few days and in the next few weeks. Stay tuned for all that in this episode, folks. But before we get into it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, a very quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. You guys have been absolute beasts of the support, folks. Today's been a very busy day. Now, the Jays haven't made a move yet today as of the time of recording, but a lot of moves have went down, and a couple of new reports have dropped, revealing some very big things for the Jays. And let's start with this report here from a couple of hours ago. Now, this is from Jon Heyman and Jon Morosi on a Bleacher Report live stream. And of course, both of these guys are at the winter meetings right now, so they're as tuned in as it gets. And they named the Red Sox and the Blue Jays among the most aggressive teams and are the most aggressive teams at the winter meetings. And I want to start with this report because we're going to be diving into a lot of different reports, but I want to start with this to kind of lay the foundation before we dive into a ton of other reports. But this is very encouraging. And I know a lot of people are talking about how Ross Atkins is sleeping and how things like that, he's not making any of the moves. They didn't sign Edwin Diaz. They didn't sign Kyle Schwarber. He is patiently waiting for the right move. And in case you missed it, let's dive into this and why this signing is actually crucial for the Jays. So Kyle Schwarber signed a 5-year, $30 million AAV deal with the Philadelphia Phillies. This is very important because if you're the Jays, now the Jays did have some preliminary interest in Kyle Schwarber, but it was never going to be, the Jays, right? They have Santander, who Ross Atkins recently said actually is going to, or today rather, is going to be healthy 100% and factor into the Jays lineup next year. I think John Schneider actually said that, but nonetheless, and regardless, they were never going to go to the lengths to get Kyle Schwarber. The Jays, that is, you want to see him stay in the NL. You don't want him going to the Yankees, any of these other teams. So he's going to be staying in the NL and not going to any teams that we're going to be playing consistently. But the Phillies were the number one, competitor to the Toronto Blue Jays to land Kyle Tucker. And now that is all but gone for the Philadelphia side of things. Reports came out that, the Phillies are now no longer interested in Kyle Tucker. Now that could change, of course, but it wouldn't make a ton of sense to sign Schwarber and Tucker, two left-handed bats, obviously, and paying him a ton of money. So that's very good news for the Jays. And things are starting to line up better and better as we start to approach the actual Kyle Tucker decision point. Now, it could still be a ways away, but this is very good news for the Jays. And obviously on the surface, you're wondering why. Again, the Phillies were the number one reported contender to the Jays for Kyle Tucker. That being said, the Orioles actually reached out to Kyle Tucker's camp, which is what Jon Morosi and Jon Heyman were reporting. Mike Elias drafted him in Houston. So there is a little bit of worry here. Now, overall, things are lining up great for both Tucker and Bichette, which we'll dive into later in this video. But Kyle Tucker could potentially head to the Orioles. I don't see the Orioles outbidding the Jays, and the Jays have a better team right now than the Orioles do, at least in the surface level of things. And of course, the Jays made the World Series last year. They have a better team than most teams. So I don't think this will be too big of a concern, but it is something worth noting. And they offered 5 years, $150 for Kyle Schwarber. Now, they didn't get it done. He went back to the Phillies. But that's something very interesting to note. But again, perfectly lines things up perfectly here to have Schwarber go back to the Phillies, keep Kyle Tucker open, and then some new reports have dropped here, and we have a lot of them to go over. But you can see here, the Jays can make another splash as they also search for a closer. Now, we'll have a full video, or I will rather, tomorrow morning covering that. But it is very interesting that they are still looking for a splash. Now, whether that's in the form of a closer or a position player, we'll focus on the closer thing in a video tomorrow morning. But Robert Murray also went on a live stream and said that Ross Atkins is not sleeping. And again, I mentioned earlier in the video, people are saying that he's sleeping, that he's not going to be able to, he hasn't been making any moves. Edwin Diaz also signed 3 years, $69 million, so $23 million a year, the highest by far for AAV for any closer. And at $20 million, $3 million AAV, the Jays could have matched that, though I don't think he wanted to come to Toronto. It seems as simple as that. The Mets also offered him something similar. He wanted to join the Dodgers, join the reigning champions, which, credit to him for doing that. I don't necessarily respect it, but I understand it from a financial point of view and things like that. But the Jays now can still look elsewhere. But as of about 25 minutes ago, things surrounding Ketel Marte are really starting to pick up. And this report dropped just minutes ago from John Morosi, revealing that the Red Sox are viewed as stronger candidates to land Ketel Marte, and that the Red Sox are heavily, heavily involved in the Ketel Marte sweepstakes. So this is very intriguing. You have guys like Jared Cannabis, you have, of course, John Morosi, you have a bunch of reporters coming out and saying that the Red Sox are interested in Ketel Marte. What does that mean for the Jays? Bo Bichette. That would take them out of the Bo Bichette sweepstakes, which, if you saw my video earlier today, things are a little bit scary on that front. They did meet with Bo Bichette. So this is another piece of information that is very crucial. This is now Bo Bichette and Kyle Tucker that I guess are, at least on the surface, for Kyle Tucker, it's clear that, the contenders are going down, and reports are starting to come out that Tucker might not get as much as many people think, whereas the Bo Bichette market is very robust. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm fine with the Red Sox getting, Ketel Marte over the Jays if the Jays get Bo Bichette and Kyle Tucker, or even if the Jays get Kyle Tucker in general, Bo Bichette goes elsewhere to the NL or something like that, or out of the AL East, and the Red Sox get Ketel Marte. I'm fine with that, but it's a very good sign. And speaking of good signs, Dylan Cease, he broke the silence. And this came out, and this is very encouraging. So apparently, Dylan Cease said that he instructed Boras said that Dylan Cease instructed Scott Boras to try to reach a deal with the Blue Jays immediately. So as soon as free agency started, Dylan Cease said, "Get me to Toronto." So this is very good news, because for the first time now, Dylan Cease was a marquee free agent, 6 years, $210 million. That's nothing to scoff at, right? That is an incredible amount of money. Free agents are now, especially Boras clients, are starting to want to go to Toronto, to the point where Dylan Cease said, "Get me to Toronto." That's what he instructed his agent to do, which is super awesome. And you can see here, nobody wants to play in Canada crowd are looking dumb right now. But Cease also said he spoke to Gausman. And shout out Kevin Gausman. He loves Toronto. We all love him here. He said, "As I asked around, no one had any negatives to say about it. The consensus has been, you're going to love the city. You're going to love the organization. It's as simple as that. There wasn't a negative." Now, if you can inject this into my veins, inject it into Kyle Tucker's veins, Bo Bichette's veins, Bo Bichette knows. These are the comments we've been waiting for years to actually see and translate to new free agents, right? We've seen it with George Springer, Kevin Gausman, and they've gotten their fair share of high-end free agents. But now with Kevin Gausman saying this to Dylan Cease, other free agents have to be taking notice here. And whether that's Miles Straw, who was at Kyle Tucker's wedding, they're good friends, talking to them. I think he's actually the best man at the wedding, Kyle Tucker's. You can obviously go, Miles Straw can say his piece there. George Springer can give him insight. They're both former teammates of Kyle Tucker in Houston. These are all things that will bode well for the Kyle Tucker sweepstakes. And for a team that's going to be among the most aggressive, this is the chance to do it. And whether it's aggressive in the Bo Bichette market, Ketel Marte market, or Kyle Tucker, most likely, things are picking up quickly, and it's going to be exciting. And what a day of news thus far. If anything drops, we'll keep you up to date. Ross Atkins coming out again. He said that they are not done and that he's still going to be working through things. And then, of course, John Schneider giving some new info on some of those injuries. Also, more details on that as well later on tomorrow morning, probably. Folks, that'll wrap it up. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.